Good morning. This is Colin Clark, editor of Breaking Defense here at the Leonardo and DRS Chalet at the Paris Air Show. Day 3, Wednesday. I'm here with Bill Lynn, CEO of DRS, the American subsidiary
Right.
of the large Italian company, European company, let's call it that, it's better. Bill, one of the things that I know you've been hammering away at since you became CEO is growing your U.S. market share.
Right.
I know your revenues are up, you can tell everybody about that, but how have you penetrated what is typically a difficult market for the Europeans to really wedge themselves into?
Well, thanks, Colin, and you're right. We have been growing. Last 4 years, we've had revenue growth and margin expansion, growing really faster than the market, which implies, as you say, we're taking more than our share. And we're heavily in the Army sensor market, electronics, and network computing. I think that's where we're able to improve our positions, particularly the last couple of years. And also with the Army, I think we've been really creating new markets, program systems the Army didn't have before, in active protection and counter UAS, UAV systems. It's creating new markets that I think has been the key. And then similarly in the Navy, we've been able to redefine the naval electronics market, particularly in the build-to-print area, and expand our positions there, as well as maintain and build on our strong position in naval power propulsion.
Now, one of the things I was wondering about when I was getting ready for this is how much the Army's reorganization and refocus has allowed you to get into this market.
We've certainly been, I think, in line with where they're going, and particularly in terms of electronic upgrades, bringing the next generation of sensors in, improving the network computing of the Army and its vehicles, and bringing that computing into the role of fusion of that data, and giving the commander of the vehicle and then the commander of the units more information on which to act more quickly.
But sounds like you're saying your technology was simply there at the right time for the right uses,
Yeah.
Not so much the Army Futures Command and the refocus on the modernization.
I think that's right. I mean, the refocus on the modernization, a lot of it's the OMFV, given that we don't do platforms.
Right.
So if the Army is going down the path of new platforms, as they are with OMFV, we're putting content on those platforms. But you equally importantly, you're upgrading the electronics, the communications, the computing on the old platforms. That's equally important to bringing that Army capability up, because it takes you 30 years to turn over a platform. So the upgrades are important, and we're equally a part of the upgrades as we are the new platform. So that ambidextrous position gives us a role almost no matter how the Army decides to modernize.
I remember that you guys, and correct me if I mischaracterize it, but you essentially have a black company that handles a lot of classified work in the U.S. Has that been significant for your growth?
We don't really have a black company. We have classified work across all 8 of our lines of business. So we do highly classified work for both the military and the 3-letter agencies, but we do it across the span of our 8. We don't have a segment that just is hidden from view and does that kind of work.
So it's an SSA?
No. We operate under a proxy, but the whole company operates under a proxy, which is essentially a board of cleared U.S. Americans that stands between us and the parent in Europe.
Right.
And it's that allows us to be a U.S. company for classification purposes, because we're able to protect the technology as fully as any company in the market.
How much has the classified portion of your business been important to growing that market share?
It's been critical. I mean, it's embedded in a lot of the systems and the programs we do, but we couldn't have the growth we've had without the classified components.
Okay. And one of the things that we've heard a lot about over the past couple of weeks is the trade wars. The Pentagon concerns as well about the Europeans possibly sort of effectively barring the U.S. from some of the European-wide defense efforts. Is that something that concerns you guys, given your patrimony?
No, I mean, our concerns more are we able to compete in the U.S. market? And we have been. I mean, I think things have evolved in a way that there's far less concern about the origin and the shareholders of the company than about getting the best technology to the warfighters, which means really a global pull on the technology. And the politics, which is always involved, the politics tends to revolve around jobs as opposed to the nameplate of the company. And DRS has 6,000 plus jobs in the U.S.
How many states?
I think 19. And any system that we bring into the U.S. military is backed by U.S. jobs. And so I think that as long as you're doing that, the nameplate, the shareholder of the company isn't really relevant. We're moving in the direction that the automobile companies moved, a couple of decades ago. I mean, if you remember, it used to be almost unpatriotic to buy a German or a Japanese car back in the 70s and the 80s. That's no longer true because they're all being built. All the car companies build in the U.S. The biggest U.S. automobile export is BMW. So it again, that nameplate doesn't matter. The jobs do matter, but the jobs for us are in the U.S.
Is there a market segment or a service where you see in the next 18 months DRS making a particularly large impact?
Well, I mean, I think the one that's the most dynamic right now for us that I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think in the Army, this active protection system market and this counter UAS market, where both for our forces as well as our allies' forces, the threat of low-cost drones against fixed forces, against airfields, against civilians has become very, very significant, and our ability to counter that is still nascent. And so there's, I think, a strong interest in the military in getting those kinds of systems like our IM SHORAD, our MLID systems out in the field, out with the forces to meet that threat.
Is there anything here at the show that has made you go, wow, or uh-oh?
No, I mean, I think, the show brings together everybody with all of their commitment and other equipment as well as their commitment to talk about what they're doing. So I don't think it's so much surprises as to the aggregation of everybody and the ability to have those kinds of conversations, see where there are more opportunities to either compete or to collaborate with our colleagues.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
I'm
Colin.
Clark, Breaking Defense.